Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Will of DDT. Hope everybody is having a great start to the set 5 meta. I am just getting back from a locals myself and wanted to share a deck profile with you guys. Gonna be running this deck for the format. Happy to say this is my main, and it is our good friend Mono Purple Luffy. Love this deck. Really happy that this leader is finally out. Been prepping for it, gathering alt arts across the sets, trying to make sure that the deck is ready to go, and happy that I was able to get the new pieces and construct the deck and was able to take the win today. Went undefeated, got first place. Thankfully, played a lot of great guys and just had a good time and some great testing. Obviously, a lot more to go, especially going into the Nat season, but enjoying the deck so far and wanted to share with my first iteration of the list. For those of you guys that don't know what this leader does is during your main phase, you can add the top card of your life to your hand to ramp an active Dawn. So just a great generic purple leader. I mean, he does what he wants to do, not really dependent on any specific combo pieces or thematics. He's fantastic, and the deck runs a lot of just amazing purple cards. It's a very mid-rangey deck, and you guys will see as we get into it. But what I love about the deck is that there's just the deck is full of simple cards, right? I mean, and the simple cards come together and make a very complex and versatile playstyle that is just a lot of fun. So without further ado, let's get into it, and we can talk more about it as we go. To start the list off, we have two Higurashis. Again, simple card, 2 cost blocker. Really doesn't, it's more so to have a cheap blocker to play throughout the game, or just have a body to put down on your earlier turns. Typically you want to go second, so for your first turn, if you have this, it's just an easy thing to put down, and it's a 1k counter in hand or something that you can play later. And then now we go skip straight into 4 costs. I have 2 4-cost structure deck Trafer Laws. I like 2. This is, don't get me wrong, this is a great card. I understand people wanting to run 3 or 4, maxing it out. I personally like it at 2. I feel like it encourages a certain place. People tend to get greedy with it. If you have a lot of it in your, if you have 4 or 3 in your deck, you often find yourself waiting to be able to use its ability. And for those of you that don't know what his ability is, on play, on play, Dawn -1. If your opponent has 7 or more cards in hand, you can trash 2 of their cards. Again, fantastic ability, great effect, but 7 cards is a lot, right? And that's not always going to be the case. When it is, oh, it hits fantastic. But you don't want to find yourself waiting for that opportune moment, because it might not come, right? But other than that, at the base, it's a 4-cost 5k blocker. So just overall good card. Again, there's a case to be made for 3 or 4. I like it at 2. No need to drive no deeper than that. One of my favorite combo pieces in the deck, which allows you to go wide, is 4 page 1 and 4 ulti. These are OG Animal Kingdom structure deck cards, and they work so well in this deck. I mean, if you let's just say you lose the die roll and you end up going first. Turn 2, you have 3 Dawn. You can use Luffy leader ability, grab that first card, ramp up to 4, and if you have these both in hand, play the ulti, Dawn -1, play the page 1, boom, you have a 5 and a 6k on board. It's great. And then again, even in hand, it's not bad. He's just a 4-cost 6k vanilla, so if you don't have the ulti, don't be afraid to drop him down, because he's a fantastic body to just be able to push through and apply a lot of pressure, or demand some removal. And then ulti, she's a 2k counter. I mean, again, doesn't get better than that. Very, very efficient and value generating cards. After that, we run 4 Miss Double Finger. She's a 2k counter, 4 cost, 4k body. Her trigger allows you to play her for Dawn -1. Sorry guys, you're gonna see me pausing a lot. My throat's a little itchy, got some allergies. And she's just probably one of the better 2Ks. Again, triggers that allow you to play cards from life are pretty valuable now, especially because if you want to be able to match yellow or towards the end of the game, you need to be able to get one more body so you can go for game next turn after your opponent attacks. You know, it really does help. But again, worst case scenario, she's a 2k body, 2k counter in hand, which always comes up big. Speaking of more 2k counters, we have 4 copies of OP1 X-Drake. I love this card. 5 cost, 5k body. Nothing to write home about, but again, if you do have to play it, it's a relevant stat line that can swing at everybody but Red, Purple Luffy and Whitebeard. 2k counter in hand. On play, Dawn -1, you can trash a card from your opponent's hand. I mean, so far all the 2Ks that we've looked at are extremely versatile. You have Ulti that can play page 1. You have Miss Doublefinger that has a decent on play but can also be played off of life. And then you have X-Drake that further helps control your opponent's hand. This with Blocker Law, there's a lot of shenanigans to be done. Now we're going into the 5 cost. This deck is very, you know, mid heavy. It's got a wide belly because it has a lot of 4 costs and a lot of 5 costs. Going into the 5 costs, we have one of the best blockers in the game, the Structure Deck Queen. 6k body, he's a blocker, 1k counter, on play, Dawn -1, draw 2, trash 1. I mean, everybody, this card's been around for forever. Everybody knows what it does, and there's a reason why this card is worth what it is right now. Hopefully we get some reprints so everybody can play. Excuse me. But again, it applies a lot of pressure, it's very defensive, and it generates hand advantage. Not much to say about this card. I'm not explaining anything that you guys don't already know about it. Moving on to the next 5 drop, we have 4 OP3 polys. I love this card. Again, you'll see, I've seen some people run 2, 3. I think 4 is just right. For those of you that don't know what this card does, he's 5 cost, 6k, no counter, but on play, rest 2 more Dawn. You can add a Dawn active and then KO up to one of your characters cost 4 or less characters. I mean, amazing. Removal and ramp, and then you're developing a 6k body. Again, simple. Don't need to explain it a little anymore. I mean, if there's something to be said as far as combos, he does what he does. He gets you closer. You play him on your 7 Dawn turn. He gets you to 8, and then you're up at 10 Dawn the next turn. It's super efficient, and even in hand, the fact that he has no counter, I mean, he doesn't feel too bricky because there's a lot of ways to cycle through your hand. I mean, you're playing queen, you don't want to get rid of your counter. You have cards like this that you can pitch that you don't feel the need to use later. But oftentimes I find myself wanting to hold on to these because he's a cheap removal. Let's say you're playing into Katakuri or NL, you're worried about some blockers off trigger, or if you're worried about some sort of disruptor, you hold on to this, play it when you're ready to make a significant push. After that, we have 4 5-drop OP02 Magellans. This card is amazing. I mean, playing this card on curve, and then that too, just that phrase on curve is different for Purple Luffy. Typically you'd play this on turn 3, right? Either your 5 or 6 Dawn turn. If you go second, when you're at 4 Dawn, you use Luffy leader ability, you pick up that first card, you're at 5 Dawn, you drop Magellan, and now your opponent is behind the curve. It completely throws them off, it ruins the game math, and you're off to the races with the 5 cost 6k leader. And really, nothing outside of 3k worlds is an efficient follow-up removal for that, and that too, it's their entire turn. Love this card. And then it's on KO comes up because nobody wants to kill it, because the effect reads, opponent's turn, when this character is KO'd, your opponent returns 2 Dawn from their field to their Dawn deck. It sets them back a whole turn. Now, if that's late game when everybody's already at 10 Dawn anyway, doesn't really matter. But throughout, you are pretty much safe, and your opponent's not going to try to kill him before they're at 10 Dawn. They're either going to try to bounce, bottom deck, or just leave him alone until they get to 10. Our last 5 cost is the new blocker kid. This card single-handedly rounds out so much of what Purple wants to do and really adds that level of complexity to these simple pieces that we've come together and make this puzzle. Kid's ability reads that he is a 5-cost 6k blocker with 1k counter. Your turn, once per turn, when a Dawn card on your field is returned to your Dawn deck, add up to 1 Dawn card as active. So essentially anything that requires you to rest to return 1 Dawn is free, and you get that Dawn back active. It is so good. And these kids do stack. So I mean, it's actually, I don't know if they stack. I've not had an opportunity to test that, but I'm sure they do. If they don't, you guys can correct me in the comments. We can have a topic, you guys can tear me apart, whatever you'd like to do. Love the discussions. But again, that doesn't take away from how good this card is. And you know, it's good in hand when you need it, but you definitely want it on the board, because everything after it facilitates, it mitigates all of your cost, and it makes things feel so, I mean, at the risk of sounding redundant, you know, efficient. I mean, because that is what it is. All right, and then now we're moving on to the 7 cost. Just another iteration of Kid. I mean, they are really hyping this character up. They're trying to make sure that nobody thinks he's a fraud. And we're not going to get into any manga anime spoilers, but they are definitely trying to make a case for him. There's a Kid agenda on Bandai's end for sure. But another great card. 7-drop Kid is fantastic. It came from the 3-captain structure deck. 7 cost, 8k. We are a little familiar with what he does, but he's a relatively new card, so I'll read out his effect. On play or when attacking, Dawn -1, your leader gains 1000 for the turn. So again, it's a smaller version of 9-drop Whitebeard for red, but it comes with the Dawn minus cost. But again, if you play this after or while you have a 5-drop Kid on the board, that Dawn that you would be returning comes back as active and essentially gives you an extra Dawn for the turn while buffing your leader. And he himself has such a beefy stat line that makes him so hard to deal with. Okay, and then the final boss monster for the deck, 9-drop Kaido. Again, I see some people running him at 2. I think 4 is a must for me, only because I always want to see him. I mean, I want to see him at least once in the game. I want to draw him, and if I draw multiple of him, again, there are ways to cycle cards out of your hand and get utility out of them, either through counter or drawing. I mean, for those of you that don't know, again, he's an OG structure deck card. He came in the original Animal Kingdom structure deck. Thankfully, I was able to pull one of these from my winter packs today and, you know, ground out for the other ones. Really happy to be able to have a playset of these guys. Finally have a awesome looking artwork. I love this so much more than the Wanted ones. Again, might be a little controversial to some of you guys that are a fan of the Wanted posters, but this is the alt art to go for. What he does is he's a 9-cost 10k body with rush, Dawn -6, KO, a 6 cost or less. Amazing. Immediate impact on the board. You don't have to, you know, just develop a big body and then wait. He removes a pesky body, and then he can swing 10k. So he's great for regaining control or just finishing the game. And then last but not least, we're going to round out the events. I run 4 Gum Gum Jet Gatling and 2 Hell's Judgment. We run a healthy amount of non-counter cards, as you saw while going through the 5 costs and above. Running 4 of these really puts a lot of value. I mean, the deck can brick, right? When you have that many, the deck can brick. This, again, helps manage some of that and mitigates the cost of running that, right? And then you're likely to see this trigger as well. The trigger lets you ramp 1 active, so you can get to that top end really quickly so that you don't feel so bricked up. Pause. And then Hell's Judgment. This is something that I'm playing around with. I think it feels really good, especially when you're playing it while you have a 5-drop kid on the board. You know, you feel like you're playing it for free, and it gets you a lot out of a lot of sticky situations, right? I mean, it helps you. The best thing about this deck is you have tons of blockers, and you want to keep them on board. You don't want to block and just send them to the trash. You want to block and be able to keep them alive, because eventually those blockers are going to be turned into aggressors. You're going to use them to end up close out your games because they're at a 6K stat line. All right, guys, I want to thank you for making it this far into the video. For those of you that stuck around, here we got a bird's eye view of the deck, and you can see with everything laid out like this a clearer picture of how this deck just explodes in the mid game. So many 6K bodies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're all a 4 of, right? So that's 25 6K bodies able to swing at 6K leaders for free, apply pressure and demand 2Ks from 5K leaders. And aside from page 1, they all do something a little bit more, right? So I mean, that is such a stat efficient way to go about it, and it demands a lot of responses from your opponent, which always feels great. And you'll notice from, like I mentioned earlier, we have 4, 8, 12, 16 characters without counter, which makes the maxing out of Jet Gatling that much more credible, because hands that would otherwise feel incredibly bricked up, can generate value, right? Like, you can, if you don't have the opportunity or the time to be able to play the queen to use these cards as discard fodder to cycle out your hand, they can be used defensively as a survival measure with Jet Gatling. So that's always fun, that's always good. And if it's a lot more forgiving with having these kinds of ratios, because everything else has some form of counter. We have 12 2K counters, and then everything else has 1K, and then there's so many blockers. We have blocker law, we have blocker kid, we have blocker queen. I mean, it's they really are meant to just hold off, and that's why I like the Judgment of Hell, because you can block while keeping them alive until you're ready to switch. Just flip the switch and just start going off and swinging into your opponent with added pressure from a Kaido or added pressure from a kid while buffing up your leader. So there's so many things to do, and you can't even discredit what happens here, right? You have a 5K body that can swing. You play double finger off of trigger, you have a 4K with 1 Dawn Honor, she's able to swing. Ulti pulls out the page 1. I mean, it's an onslaught, right? And I think the way the deck is kind of crafted is a little bit better going into the big bad of the format, Sakabozo. Hate that deck with a passion, and I really want this leader to be able to consistently go toe-to-toe. I know that's asking a lot, but I mean, that's my goal, right? I mean, Luffy brothers, stand up. This is our moment. And I think going wide really is able to take advantage of how glass cannon, as my buddy Anonymous likes to say, Sakabozo can be. But I digress. This isn't a Luffy versus Sakabozo yap session. I did just want to share my list. Had a little bit of success today, thankfully. got this bad boy out of it, and we're striving to improve. So, you know, talk to me in the comment section. What can we be doing better? What do you guys like about the list? What don't you like? You know, really just let me have it. And I love the discussions in the comments, like I said before. This is the deck that I plan on taking to Nats, and you know, be on the lookout for our future Pirate Rumbles. You'll be able to see this deck in action. We'll have some fun matchups for you guys and keep the casting going. As always, we appreciate you guys a lot. Keep supporting the channel. Leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe to and we'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.